Hi, everyone. Welcome back to Bookmarked by Cousins Book Club. I'm your host, Lena, and today we have our first audio episode. This week, I asked my girls on the Cousins Book Club Instagram for a poll and some Q&As of what we would like to see this week, and what a big one I kept getting was book to screen adaptations. So today we will be talking about some shows and movies that were originally books, ones I'm looking forward to, ones I will never stop talking about. And yeah, I hope you guys enjoy. So, for the sake of this episode, I chose book to screen adaptations that I have read the book for or know a lot about the book, just so I can give some more insights. Now, we're going to start off talking about one major movie, and there's a lot of ones that I could spend hours talking about, but we're just going to talk about my favorite, and that is Little Women by Louisa May Alcott. Little Women is about the four March sisters, Meg, Jo, Beth, and Amy, as they navigate childhood, poverty, and the American Civil War, growing up into womanhood while also confronting societal expectations, romance, and their own individual aspirations. I absolutely love this story. I don't have sisters. I'm the eldest daughter and have a younger brother, but I think this is such a coming of age story and represents women so well. I love the sisterhood of all, and I see it a lot in my friendships with women and my cousins that I'm really close with. I also see it with the women in my family. But we were just talking about what characters we think we were most like in our friend group because there is four of us, just like there is in the book and movie. And if you tell me about who you identify with the most in Little Women, I feel like I can tell exactly what type of person you are. Personally, I feel like I'm both Amy and Jo. I think Amy and Jo are different sides of the same coin. Amy is saying, I want to be great or nothing, and Jo's no one will forget Jo March parallel each other so well and show how ambitious they both are, but in different ways. And I think all of the sisters' aspirations were represented so well. An example of this is Meg. She is the eldest sister, and we see her want a more homely life. She wants a relationship and a husband she loves, and she wants a family, and she doesn't aspire too much for money or fame, even when she struggles because of the life she chooses. And we see Jo go to her on her wedding day and be like, we need to run away. You can't do this. And Jo says, you will be bored of him in 2 years and will be interesting forever. And Meg says, just because my dreams are different than yours doesn't make them unimportant. And I think that represents her and her storyline so well. Also, when talking about the third sister, Beth, she is asked about her music and she is very talented, but she wants it to be private and it's almost just for herself. But Amy tells her, don't limit yourself. And I think Beth is the sister that gets overlooked the most because of her storyline and also because she is the more reserved sister. But I think Greta Gerwig, the director of the 2019 film, really said it best how the scenes of her at the grand piano are such good representation of her because she is so strong, because she is just as ambitious as the rest of them, because why wouldn't she? She's a March sister. I just love how Little Women shows these different dynamics of each sister. And I also really love the romance storyline with Lori, who is their neighbor and kind of becomes a part of their family and then has these relationships with the daughters and figures out what he wants in his life. And I don't want to spoil it, but the book has been out since 1869, so I'm just going to say it. But I love seeing Lori's relationship with Jo and how she turns him down because they are better off as friends and they have always been best friends, and she knows that that isn't right between them. But later on, when they are apart, she goes back and thinks maybe she was wrong and maybe she does want to see him. But in her heart, she knows that she cares more about being loved than to love him. And then Lori ends up with Amy, who is the youngest sister and has loved him since she was a child and gave him that love he wanted. I think there's some really controversial takes out there on who Lori should have ended up with, but I do really love Lori and Amy together. I think they were made for each other in that way. And I think Jo ended up getting the story she deserved, and it worked out really well. But I could talk about this movie for ages. I absolutely love it. I watch it every year around wintertime, around the holidays, because I won't say it's a Christmas movie, but it does happen around that time of the year. And I'm also going to be reading the book this year during that time. So I'm really excited for it. It's my absolute favorite. And yeah, I don't want to talk about it for too long. So now we are going to talk about some show adaptations and shows that have recently came out, starting off with We Were Liars. So I did not fully read We Were Liars. I started it a long time ago and never really finished it. And I ended up kind of getting short versions of it from friends who have read it, and I talked a lot about it with them. And so I kind of knew about it, but I never really knew the ending. And I just watched it on Amazon Prime this summer when it came out, and it was so incredibly good. We Were Liars follows Cadence, or we could call her Katie, after she suffers from a traumatic amnesia from a mysterious accident that happened one summer at her family's island. Now, her family is very rich. They are the Sinclairs. It's very much Last Great American Dynasty coded from Taylor Swift. They have their own island in Cape Cod called Beechwood Island, and they have these summer houses. Each family member has a summer house on the island, and it's a family of three older sisters, and they all have kids, and we get to follow along with their kids' storylines, the cousins, throughout multiple summers of their lives. And this leads us to the summer at Beechwood where Katie had some type of mysterious accident, and the entire show is her trying to figure out what exactly happened to her and talking with her cousin throughout the summer and being on the island trying to piece together these puzzle in her mind. And in the final episode, it finally reveals everything that has happened. And I'm going to try to keep it very vague, even though I want to say every detail that happened. But the plot twist was nothing like I was expecting, and it was so shocking. And I really loved all the foreshadowing in this show. I think it was insanely good. I know some of the foreshadowing also happened in the book the exact same way, after I watched the show, I literally went back and made a full list of all the foreshadowing I caught. There's so many quotes and so many actions and little moments that you would only catch if you really knew what was going to happen at the end or had read the book before you watched it. I literally pull out the list to everyone that I tell to watch the show, and I make them hear the list afterwards, and it's always kind of shocking, or they have already pieced that together. But I'm so obsessed with the way they filmed it. With all my friends that I've talked to who have watched the show and read the books, a lot of them are really liking the show better because they've said it's a little bit more flushed out. Johnny and Mirren, who are two of the cousins, and Gat, who is a family friend and he's practically family, are more side characters in the books and are not really given that full backstory, but are in the show, we get to see them as individuals and we get to see their own storylines instead of seeing it more through Katie's perspective. I'm really hoping that we get a second season for the second book, Family of Liars, where I think we'll dive more into the parents' backstories and some of the lore that happened to them on Beechwood during their childhood and how it made them the way they are because they do have such a complex family, and a lot of the dynamics are very toxic and confusing. But I'm really hoping that they get renewed for that second season, and I'm really looking forward to it. Now we are going to talk about normal people. This is the third episode that I have mentioned normal people, and I think that just shows the impact that it has had on me. I said in my last episode that the show is almost better than the book in a way, and I think it really comes from me reading the book and then watching the show straight after. It really makes you understand the characters and the story more. But Normal People is about Marianne and Connell, and we followed them as teenagers into their college years. In high school, they kind of developed this relationship of being friends in private and also getting into sort of a situationship, relationship where they continued to see each other, but it was kept a secret from everyone at school. We then see them have a falling out in high school and not talk for a year and then rekindle in college. I think the show does a really good job of showing how both characters transform throughout that year, and we see Connell, who was a very popular soccer player in high school and had a lot of friends, and Marianne, who was the complete opposite. She was very quiet and bookish, and she had a really difficult home life that she was hiding from everyone. And those years into college, Marianne moves away and kind of finds her group, and she thrives in that academic environment where no one knows her. And we see Connell, who ends up attending the same university. And he kind of realizes he doesn't have friends there, and he's lonely, and he sees Marianne and the life she's made for herself after a year of not talking. And it's kind of this whole moment. And I love how the show portrays their moments together. I think they're so intimate. There is a quote in the book and in the show while they're in high school, and it's Connell telling Marianne if she bumped into him, she would pretend to not know him. And she says, I would never pretend not to know you, Connell. And this kind of follows them into their college years where they run into each other at a party. For a second, Connell sees her, and it looks like they might not she might actually pretend that she doesn't know him in front of all of her friends, but she says, Connell Waldron from Beyond the Grave. And later in this interaction, we see him saying, You look really well. And she says, Classic me, came to college and got pretty. And Connell says, No, you were always pretty, very pretty. You know you're beautiful. And I think that perfectly describes their relationship because he spent so much time hiding her and almost being shameful in high school, and then in the same breath, being so intimate with her in private. And to majorly spoil the ending, if you guys haven't read it, they don't end up together. They kind of make the decision to go their separate ways, and Daisy Edgar Jones, who plays Marianne in the show, has said that they will always be significant to each other and they made that decision and maybe they'll reunite when they're older, but it's its own thing. And Paul Mescal, who plays Connell in the show, has said similar things, and he says he always feels differently about the ending depending on where he is in his life because the ending has a lot of people up for interpretation. You can kind of, some people want them together and say they are made for each other, and others know that them being apart at the ending of the book was the right choice. So you can kind of interpret it on your own, and I love that about the book and the show. It really is such a great one, and if you, it's kind of controversial. Some people really don't like it, and I understand, but it is one of my favorites. Next, we are going to talk about The Summer I Turned Pretty, and this is one of the biggest shows of the summer, I would argue. And I read the first book, and the second and third, I kind of got some like footnotes versions of the other two, and I also listened to the audiobooks when the actors re-recorded it. But I've been watching the show and I knew exactly what was supposed to happen because of the books. And I really loved what they did with the last season, season 3. I was a little bit surprised that the last couple episodes were kind of in the dark for anyone who read the books. It was completely just not even in the books. And I was a little bit kind of thrown for a curveball. I really thought that it was going to end up Belly chooses herself or she chooses Summer metaphorically. But I'm really happy with the ending, and I'm happy, this is kind of spoilers if you haven't watched it, but I'm really happy she chose Conrad and how that worked out. I feel like if you read the books, or at least even the first book, you know how important Conrad was to her, and it's shown that through the show how significant he was in her world, and I love that they got that second chance in their adult lives. I also recently noticed that in the show, we get many flashbacks of Conrad, but we do not get many of Jeremiah. We don't even get one of Jeremiah. It is only flashbacks of Conrad, and then sometimes Jeremiah and Stephen will be in it, but it's never about Belly and Jeremiah. It has always been Belly and Conrad. So I think that they did it really well in the show. And now there's going to be the Summer I Turned Pretty movie, and I'm really excited it's coming out. I have high hopes. I've seen a lot of theories about what people think it's going to be about, and I don't know. Jenny Han, the author, said there's still some big milestones in Belly's life that we want to see and we don't want to miss. So I really think the movie is going to be a wedding. I think it's going to be her wedding, and also maybe them moving into the summer house or seeing where everyone with Steven's company and Jeremiah with the chef plotline. I think we'll get to see that. I could also see it maybe even being so flash forward that we see kids for Conrad and Belly, but I do think it's going to lean more towards the wedding aspect. And because they're still pretty young, unless they were to age them up a little for the movie, and maybe we'll get a flash forward. So I know that that is mentioned in the books in somewhat of a flash forward or like an epilogue, so I could also see that be playing in the movie. And yeah, I'm really excited about that one. Lastly, for shows, we are going to be talking about Daisy Jones and the Six. This is a book by Taylor Jenkins Reid and was adapted by Amazon in 2023. This is a limited series, only one book and one season. I absolutely love this one. I think it's about time for another rewatch for me. It's been a good year or two since I watched it, and I'm kind of craving it. But Daisy Jones and the Six is about a fictional band in the 70s, and we follow them in the book and in the show in the making of this band and the rise to stardom and how famous and crazy things got for them. But as a lot of bands do, they end up breaking up. And we see through interviews of all the bandmates throughout time how this happened. And in the book and kind of in the show, we have very unreliable narrators. And I think the show gives a little bit more clarity on it, but it still is not perfectly pieced together. And we see how all their stories are mixed up and how all the relationships within the band were. And I really love the show, and I absolutely loved all the relationships that were happening in the show and how complicated the dynamics were. I don't want to spoil too much of this one, but we really get to follow the main plot line, which is Billy, our lead singer of the band, and his relationship with his wife, Camilla, or Cammy, and how their relationship is throughout the making of the band and the years as performers, because she loved him before he was even in the band or at the beginning of being in the band. So she really got to be with him throughout this journey to stardom. And we see that. And then we also see the dynamics change when Daisy Jones, the new lead singer, gets added into this band. And we see how everything kind of changes, and everything is so messy in this show and book, and I love everything about it. It also is very reminiscent and inspired by Fleetwood Mac, so if you like them, you would probably like this. They also produced an album that got released, a real album. It's pretty much a fictional band that made a real album for the show, and the music is actually amazing. I really wish they could have toured for it. But I love how one of my favorite bands is actually a completely fictional thing. But I would definitely give this a watch and read the book because it does give a lot more details into the storyline that the show doesn't have enough time to cover. But I really recommend Daisy Jones and the Six. It is a favorite of mine, and the show is great. Now we're going to get into some movies that I'm really looking forward to that will be released within the next year or two. First up, we have People We Meet on Vacation by Emily Henry. This will be released January 9th of 2026 by Netflix. I absolutely love Emily Henry. I've already talked about her in some of my other videos, and People We Meet on Vacation is her first major romance in what we'll call the Emily Henry realm. We follow Poppy and Alex, who are best friends and spend an annual vacation together every single summer, traveling to different places. But they have a falling out and don't speak for about 2 years until Poppy reaches out and says they should have one final trip to mend their friendship. Throughout the book, we get flashbacks of old summer vacations and how they originally met each other over the years, and we get to see all of the years that they spent as friends, and then also how their relationship kind of had this underlying love for each other. And we get to see the truth behind their feelings that comes out, and it will be a very cute rom-com. I'm really excited to see it. We get Tom Blythe, who just played President Snow in the new Hunger Games, The Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes. And we also have Emily Bader, who was in My Lady Jane, a show on Amazon Prime, which I am so sad was canceled after one season because I absolutely loved it and I love her. But knowing both of them in both of these projects, I am so incredibly excited to see them in a rom com together. I think they will be the perfect Poppy and Alex. I've also seen the promotion for it already, some of the pictures, and it looks so good. If you have read the books, you know how good those pictures look. The outfits, just the way they look, everything about it. I have very, very high hopes. The only thing is, I really do wish it was released in the summer because it is a very summer rom com, but I'm just incredibly happy to see it. And speaking of Tom Blythe and the Hunger Games, we have a new Hunger Games coming out, Sunrise on the Reaping. This will be released November 20th, 2026. So I don't want to give too many spoilers because you still have a year to read it if you haven't, and I very much recommend it. This is a prequel to the original Hunger Games trilogy. It is all about Haymitch's backstory. I read Sunrise on the Reaping back in July, and seeing his story was so unreal. I grew up watching the movies, I have read two of the Hunger Games books, and his story was kind of just devastating, to be honest. I don't have much to say besides Suzanne Collins knows exactly what she's doing. The Hunger Games series and the world is so meticulously crafted. Every story is woven together so perfectly. Every detail has a purpose. And I think this book added so much more depth, not only for Haymitch, but also for a lot of the other characters that we already know through the other books and the other movies. Also, our actor who is playing young Haymitch will be Joseph Zeta, who plays Johnny in the We Were Liars show. And I think these are going to really be his breakout roles. I know some people were skeptical about his casting when it first came out, but I have no doubt after watching him in We Were Liars, I completely could see Haymitch, and I think he is such a great actor. Also, I would recommend watching We Were Liars before reading Sunrise on the Reaping because if you have that visual of him, it really helps. And I don't want to say much else. I know the casting for the movie is absolutely star studded and stacked with some of the craziest casting I've ever seen. So I have no doubts that it will be amazing. I've also seen some criticism surrounding the pictures that have been leaked from the filming and the outfits and the set, but I'm really pleased with how it's coming out. It's supposed to be kind of set in a 70s environment, and I've seen some of the artwork that they'll be using and the outfits, and I think the Hunger Games have really never let me down. I think that franchise has always been done so well, so I really have no doubts about this, and I'm very excited to see it. But you will catch me November 20th in theaters. I will be there. I will be watching it. And I will also be watching it at home in a full Hunger Games marathon in chronological order. Lastly, for this episode, we have The Love Hypothesis by Ali Hazelwood. Now, we don't have a release date for this one, but I'm pretty sure it's being made by Amazon. We have our casting, which is Lily Reinhart as Olive Smith and Tom Bateman as Dr. Adam Carlson, and I think this casting is absolutely perfect. I read the book years ago when I first got into romance books, and it is about two scientists, Olive being her third year of her PhD program, and Dr. Adam Carlson, who is a young professor. Olive is kind of a skeptic of love and doesn't believe in long lasting relationships, and she ends up lying to her friend and says that she's been dating even though she hasn't. But to prove it, she goes and kisses the first person she sees, and that ends up being Adam. And that leads them into this kind of fake dating scenario, and they end up pursuing it as if it was a scientific experiment. But you can predict how that goes in a rom com scenario. Obviously, things turn a little bit more serious. I've seen some teasers on TikTok of Lily and Tom kind of doing promos for the movie, and just having fun TikToks to kind of get us excited. And I have a feeling that this is going to be so good. I'm really looking forward to it. And I hope we get a release date soon just so we have something to look forward to. But I'm pretty excited for it. I really need to get more into Ali Hazelwood's books, but I know that one is kind of a classic of hers and really one that everyone who loves her has read. So I know it's going to be a good one. And that is the last upcoming book to screen adaptations that I have for y'all. I think it's so exciting to see how many of our favorite books are getting adapted, and even more exciting when they're being done right, whether it's a rom com or a dystopian world. There's just something so exciting to see these stories come to life and stories that I really love. And yeah, I really hope you enjoyed this episode and got to know a little bit more about some book to screen adaptations, maybe got some more you're interested in, or just liked hearing about ones that you already love. But that's all for me, guys, and thank you so much for listening, and I hope to see you in the next episode.